Right, hello everyone, welcome back to Ickleton Golf Club. My name is Jack Lee, I'm a short game specialist here at Ickleton Golf Club. In today's video, we're going to talk about bounce, what it is, how it can help you, how it should help you, but how it can possibly hinder you at the same time. Let's get into it. So hello everyone, welcome back. If this is your first time on the channel, please make sure you are liking the video if you like what you see so far, and also leave us a subscribe. I'm trying to get to 5,000 as soon as possible. Like I said in the introduction to that video, let's talk about bounce. So bounce was once upon a time something that not a lot of people knew a lot about, and I think over the last few years we are slowly getting to grips with what it is, what it does, how it helps us, how it hinders us, all that kind of stuff. So this is a bit of an overview today on how to use this nice angle that we've got on our wedge. So first and foremost, what is it? If I was to sit this wedge on my hand just like that, you'll notice that that leading edge does not sit flush to my hand. I would have to lean this wedge forward in order for that leading edge to sit flush on my hand. So bounce angle is the difference between the trailing edge and the leading edge once the trailing edge is sat on the ground. Now, how is that useful? So we are finding more and more often that if we are, when chipping and when playing out of bunkers, if we are using this bounce angle, so i.e. if we are delivering that trailing edge of the golf club to the ground as opposed to the leading edge to the ground, we're finding it a lot more forgiving. I will now show you a small example of why that is the case. Right, so just switching to the GoPro, I'm just going to pop you down next to these balls here. So if we were to deliver the leading edge to this golf ball, I'll do it in a practice swing first so you can see. So we'll get a lot of shaft lean, we'll see divots like that. Now that is absolutely petrifying for me, because if that's knocked in the right place, it is absolute disaster. Now, if we are to start to use trailing edge and get it skimming across the ground, we'll notice that that divot is a lot less severe. And one thing you're actually allowed to do with this now is you're allowed to get this divot in a slightly wrong place, i.e. slightly behind the golf ball, but because this bounce is more prone to skidding across the turf instead of digging in, you can actually hit some half decent shots actually using the bounce. Now, one thing that can massively affect the bounce that you should be thinking about using on your wedges is ground conditions. So here in England at Ickleton, we have very damp winters and we also have very dry summers. So when it comes to your wedge setup, if you are someone that plays a course all year round where it is very firm, I would recommend that you have slightly less bounce. That is because as this club is interacting into the ground, if it's very firm, you don't necessarily want a lot of bounce because it's lifting that leading edge into the sky. Okay, so if we're finding like we're hitting on concrete, for example, we sometimes want this leading edge to get a little bit lower. Similarly, if you're playing on very wet land all year round, you do want a bit of this bounce because we want it to be able to slide into the turf or even slightly below the surface and propel those golf balls into the air. I'm a big advocate here in the UK, because we have such varying ground conditions, for people to have standard bounce or very close to standard depending on your tendencies and your deliveries. The rule of thought is the steeper you are with your angle of attack, the more bounce that you need. Similarly, if you have got a very shallow angle of attack, you're more prone to using less bounce. Right, now let's quickly head into a bunker and let's see how that bounce angle helps us out in that situation. So I've got two balls and a GoPro here. I'm going to use my GoPro to illustrate to you how much of an effect using the bounce has once you get into the bunker. So let's have a look at this. So aside of these two golf balls, I'm going to just move my club through this sand, but in one instance I'm going to make sure it's the leading edge that is catching that sand first, and in the second instance I'm going to make sure it's that trailing edge, so I'm using that bounce effectively. So on this first occasion, when we move this trailing edge in, you'll notice that it's very easy for sand to gather up the face, and that is not what we want, because it'll probably result in hitting a shot a little bit like this. Not good at all. Now in this instance, and you can see that hefty divot that I just took with that last shot there, not great. Now in this instance, I'm going to open my wedge, because what this does is actually exposes a little bit more bounce. And what I'm going to do is move it similar to what I just did then. Now you'll notice that nowhere near as much sand gathers up that face. You'll notice that it's a little bit easier for me to glide it through that sand, versus again, when I go leading edge, wedge wants to get stuck, a lot of sand gathers up that face. So now let's have a go at twisting that face open, exposing a bit more bounce, and hopefully gliding it through that sand a bit easier. Two very different golf shots there, I'm sure you'll agree. And finally, last but not least, how to determine if you are using the bounce correctly or not. So I've got a few golf balls here. We did a little bit of this earlier, so I moved a club in to the ground where I leant my handle forward, so we had a lot of shaft lean. That then makes it a lot easier for that leading edge to want to interact with the ground, and you're going to see divots that look a little bit like that. Absolutely terrifying. So in that occasion, we are not using the bounce of the golf club. We're very much taking that bounce away, making sure that leading edge hits the ground first, and it's a recipe for disaster unless you are some level of striking, unless you're very, very precise with your strikes. Now, to help you deliver more bounce when it comes to these shots, if you're someone that is setting up with a lot of forward shaft lean, it's going to be hard for you to take out that shaft lean. So let's make it super simple. Let's set up with no shaft lean in effect. So feel as though the butt of the golf club points towards your belly button. Then from there, I want you to feel as though when it returns to impact, we get this relining up. So we're going to brush the ground, but we want to feel as though by the time that club gets to the ball, our handle is not in front, not necessarily behind, because this is going to have the adverse effect. Let's see if we can get that handle lining back up when we come into impact. So super simple, ball position in the middle of our stance, shaft pretty neutral to start with. Let's see if we can brush that ground and get that bounce lining back up again when we come into impact. You'll notice that the difference in divot between that shot and my example one earlier is vastly different. All I'm doing in these occasions is just brushing that turf. You're noticing that I'm hardly leaving a divot, it's more like a graze, versus if we were to have this more pronounced shaft lean, if we would dig it into the ground, it comes off super hot, super low, despite me striking it pretty good on that occasion. It's not what the doctor ordered. Right, so there you go. So that was my little guide of what is bounce, how it can help you, how it can hinder you. If you found this video useful, please make sure you leave it a like, subscribe if you've not done so already, and apart from that, I will see you in the next one. Later.